You leave the gym completely destroyed. You're exhausted, drenched in sweat, and your muscles are screaming. But month after month, you look exactly the same. It is incredibly easy to assume that burning lungs and deep muscle soreness are the biological triggers for growth, but they aren't. A massive pump and severe bodily fatigue are just temporary side effects of physical exertion. Think about it. If sheer physical exhaustion and sweating through your shirt equated to building massive amounts of muscle mass, every competitive marathon runner on Earth would be walking around with tree trunk legs. We fall into a psychological trap where we equate suffering with progress. Chasing that immediate sensation of extreme soreness actively blinds you to the specific mechanics of how muscle tissue is forced to adapt. A major part of this trap comes from who we choose to imitate. Millions of beginners head into the gym and immediately try to copy the routines of genetically gifted athletes using performance-enhancing drugs. Those 50-set, ultra-high-volume routines you see in fitness magazines are designed to flush blood into the muscles of guys who are chemically enhanced. A natural lifter doesn't need a massive checklist of 15 different cable variations to grow. Natural bodies operate under highly unforgiving biological constraints. Trying to apply a pharmacologically enhanced blueprint to a natural system guarantees you will overtrain and stall out. So what actually forces a natural muscle to grow? The primary driver is mechanical tension. That means applying a heavy, concentrated physical load to the specific target muscle fibers. Your body views muscle tissue as incredibly metabolically expensive to maintain. It will actively resist adding mass unless the stress from that tension pushes it past its current limits, forcing it to adapt just to survive the environment. To cross that survival threshold, you have to push your sets close to true muscular failure. This is the exact point where the targeted muscle physically cannot complete another repetition with proper form, regardless of how much mental willpower you exert. But when people try to hit failure, they often resort to ego lifting. If you start heaving the weight and convulsing around just to get the bar up, you are using momentum. You strip the tension away from the exact muscle fibers you want to grow and dump that dangerous physical stress straight onto your joints. On the flip side, being excessively strict and lifting like a perfectly rigid robot can also hold you back. If you micromanage every millimeter of the movement, you restrict the raw physical force you can generate against the weight, ultimately reducing the total tension. And then there's the myth of muscle confusion. Constantly rotating through an endless list of new exercises prevents you from ever mastering a movement. Your muscles don't have a miniature brain to register variety. They only recognize the degree of mechanical load they are under. Building size requires putting your ego aside. You have to lock in a consistent routine, use a solid but natural range of motion, and focus entirely on maximizing the objective physical stress placed on those specific fibers. But even with perfect technique, there is a biological roadblock that can kill your progress: systemic fatigue. This is total body cardiovascular and central nervous system exhaustion. Let's look at this chart comparing target muscle fatigue to systemic fatigue. When you run extreme high-rep sets of 15 to 20 reps or more, the massive buildup of lactic acid, nausea, and burning lungs spikes your systemic fatigue. You end up racking the weight because you are out of breath, stopping the set long before the specific target muscle has actually reached failure. This exact same interference happens when you do heavy pre-workout cardio. You walk over to the weights with your systemic fatigue already starting at a 50% baseline. By exhausting your nervous system before you even touch a dumbbell, you severely cap the amount of mechanical tension you can generate. To ensure the muscle fails before your lungs do, you have to rest properly. Taking 2 to 5 full minutes between heavy sets gives your central nervous system the required time to clear that systemic fatigue, so you can push the target muscle to true failure again. If your goal is strictly to build muscle, you have to separate your energy systems. Treating a heavy lifting session like an intense cardiovascular endurance test actively suppresses the very biological triggers you're trying to activate. Once you establish mechanical tension, the only way to keep growing is to consistently apply more of it. This is progressive overload. You cannot rely on subjective human memory to track exactly how you felt or what you lifted 2 weeks ago. To guarantee adaptation, you need the cold, hard data of a physical logbook. Visual physical changes are agonizingly slow. you aren't going to notice a millimeter of new bicep growth in the mirror from day to day. But if the numbers in your logbook are slowly ticking upward, an extra rep here, 5 more pounds there, you have valid proof that the underlying tissue is getting larger. Without a precise, measurable history of the physical stress you subjected your body to, every trip to the gym is just a random gamble instead of a scientific protocol. All of the heavy lifting, the tracking, and the sweat only accomplishes one thing: breaking the muscle fibers down. The actual process of building them back up happens entirely outside of the gym. You have to systematically track your daily protein intake. If you train to failure without providing your body with the required structural materials to recover, you are essentially knocking down a brick wall and expecting it to rebuild itself without bringing any new bricks to the site. And those materials are only utilized when you power down. The biological synthesis of new muscle mass happens almost exclusively while you sleep. Without a minimum of 7 solid hours a night, that active phase of growth is drastically stunted. You can have the perfect routine, push yourself to the absolute limit, and log every single rep, but if you ignore the quiet, unglamorous discipline of feeding and resting your body, all that extreme intensity on the gym floor